The Philadelphia Church of God presents the Trumpet Daily.
Last night we had dinner with the Romero's Guitar Quartet, a group that's going to be performing here tonight in the beautiful Armstrong Auditorium. And I was seated at the end of the table next to Pepe Romero, who will be accompanying Mrs. Paula Malone for a beautiful Spanish song during the concert as well. But I asked Pepe, one of the senior members of this family group of classical guitarists, about his daily routine, just what schedule he keeps when he's on the road. He tours around the world quite often. And then I also asked him about his routine when he's back home and he's not touring. And he said when he's on the road, he generally likes to get up in the hotel and exercise and then prepare for his rehearsal sometime in early afternoon, and then go back to the hotel to take a short nap, just to rev up his engines for the evening performance. And I said, well, that sounds like it's pretty standard fare, I suppose, for the day of a performance. What about when you're back home, when you're at your home and you don't have a concert to go to? And he said, well, the schedule back there is pretty straightforward. When he gets up in the morning, he works about 3 or 4 hours practicing his guitar, as you might imagine, and then breaking for lunch. And he said after lunch he has a little bit of a family tradition where he'll get together with his brother and have a sip of coffee and relax for a little bit. And then after that go back into another 3 or 4 hours of practice on the guitar before he then retires for the evening and, as he said, spends time with his family. So it's a pretty simple lifestyle, and yet one of diligence, at least with respect to his real professional skill that he practices. In one sense, I guess it's not a surprise, and that is his profession. That's what he works at, just like any other individual who might work 8 to 9 hours a day on the job. But on the other hand, for someone who's so good at what he does, he's an amazing performer, he's an amazing musician. For someone that good, it still amazes me to think about an individual like that practicing for 6 to 8 hours a day to keep getting better. Here is a man who's now well into his 60s, and he's still working at it. He's still going strong. His comment reminded me of a statement made by Malcolm Gladwell in his book, The Outliers, where he said, practice isn't the thing you do once you're good. He said, it's the thing you do that makes you good. It's not what you start doing later in life after you become good at certain skills or abilities. That's what makes you good. Now, according to Gladwell and a number of other recent studies, these experts that we see in society from time to time, they are who they are because they put in the time practicing. You may have heard of the 10,000-hour rule. We've written about that a little bit at thetrumpet.com. As I said, it's not just Gladwell, it's a number of other scientific studies that point out that those individuals that achieve mastery in any field do so because they put in their time. There's no special talents, in other words, that are just born with it, that never have to practice. They just have it automatically. Now, there are unique abilities and aptitudes for sure, depending upon your heredity, and your environment certainly factors into that. But there's no substitute for hard work. I think everyone understands that. I gave a forum recently just on how difficult it is to put in the time for your spiritual life, your prayer life, your Bible study. You have to put in the time to really advance farther along spiritually. Now, going back to these special aptitudes and abilities that one can develop here at the college, I mean, you students are in training really to become experts in the balanced lifestyle. It's more spread out among many different fields and activities. more so than perhaps Mr. Romero. At the academy, it might be a little bit different. I know we encourage our children who are still at the young age to really push themselves while they have a little more time in the areas of music and dance and that sort of thing, because the times are coming, as you college students know, when there's going to be quite a few demands on them to meet up with their studies and to write papers and so on. So when you're young, when you're 8, when you're 9, when you're 10, it's wise to take advantage of those years to really develop your talents, your skills, so that they can be used later. Perhaps at this college, some of our own students have performed on this stage with skilled professionals, just like the group that we're going to be seeing here tonight. But as far as the college training is concerned, you are here to become experts, as I said, in the field of balanced, godly living, everything offered to our students here at Armstrong College. All of it, when you put it together, the Bible-based liberal arts instruction, all of the lectures that you receive, the hands-on work-study program where you work 20 to 22 hours per week, that certainly factors into your education here at the college. All of the fine arts engagements, like tonight's performance, like tonight's concert that many of you work at, that many of you will see and enjoy. The formal events that you attend each year with all of the formal dances, the speaking engagements, and so on. The many opportunities that so many of you have for travel. You just returned, a lot of you just returned from overseas, attending festivals at various sites around the world. All of the intramural sports activities, the wholesome dating life, that's certainly a wonderful feature to this college experience, and just the overall uplifting family atmosphere. That was one of the things we enjoyed most last night, is just seeing two fathers who now have many grandchildren, two grandfathers, as well as two sons, and just the lively discussion that those four had at the table as my wife and I were just kind of looking back and forth. It was like we were at a family gathering. It was like we were at Thanksgiving dinner at the Romeros, and they were just back and forth with one another. They loved each other. And we thought when we went home, here they travel the world together, they spend time on planes together, they're in hotels together, but you can tell they have a close family. And there's many benefits that come along with that in developing, as Solomon wrote, the whole man. What a unique opportunity you have here. And then when you add it up, your 4 years at God's college, all 8 semesters, if you go for 4 years, you receive quite a lot of training, about 4,500 hours or so on the job, just the hours that you'll put in, maintaining and beautifying the grounds if you work outside, or processing the literature requests that come in by the tens of thousands each year, the calls as well, the telephone calls that come into the call center, or assisting teachers, administrators. There's the television department, there's the concert series, there's the editorial department, all of the websites that we produce. Many students, as you know, are involved in these activities, and it's a large and growing work. You put it all together over the course of 4 years, and I said it makes for a balanced lifestyle. It makes for a balanced training regimen. Now, with full-time students completing your required 120 hours or so, I think most of you will get in 125 or so by the time that you graduate after 4 years. If you put all of that together over the course of 4 years, it amounts to about 1,800 hours in the classroom. That's a lot of time that you're going to be sitting listening to instructors, to teachers in various classes. Lots of speeches that you're going to be hearing, lots of lectures like this one that you hear day in and day out. It adds up over time. It certainly does. It adds up. I mean, at least half of the time that you spend, probably it's about the same, I suppose, the equivalent, or maybe more when you put it all together. I know the hour per hour ratio, as far as how much you study with respect to each hour in class, it's probably a little bit smaller here, the amount of time you put in outside of class, than maybe you would at Harvard, just because of the many other activities that you're expected to participate in as well. But put together the study time with those 1,800 hours or so that you're in class, and as I say, you can double that quickly. Tack on the other 1,200 hours or so that come from forums and Bible studies, the Sabbath sermons that you're able to attend, and then all of the various extracurricular activities that go together with it. The intramural activities, as I said, the campouts, the dating excursions, the community outreach events, all the formal dances and such. You add it up and it adds up to 8, 9, 10,000 hours easily over the course of those 4 years. And what I've rattled through there doesn't even take into account yet the time that you spend with God, the personal relationship that you have with God and that you work on daily through Bible study and prayer. As I said, I spoke recently on the work habit of praying to God. I mentioned in class on another occasion recently about giving a tithe or working toward giving a tithe of your day, some 2 hours or 2 hours plus of your day to God, just to work on your relationship with God. If you were to attain that, and that's not easy, but if you were to attain that, if you start a little bit less than that as a freshman, but work your way up to it, over the course of 4 years, you will have put in 2,000, maybe 2,500 hours into your relationship with God. That begins to add up. Let's look at Psalm 89. Prayer and Bible study, if we to adjust that quote by Gladwell, prayer and Bible study is not something that you do after you mature spiritually. It's not something you do after you grow up and become more spiritually minded. Prayer and Bible study is what you do in order to become spiritually minded. It's what you do in order to mature, to grow up, to think like God. Become you therefore perfect, as your Father in heaven is perfect, Jesus said over in Matthew 5. But look at Psalm 89 here. See what David wrote in the Psalms. Chapter 89. Gladwell and others have said 10,000 hours is the magic number to greatness. And just think about you students, even you high school students or elementary school students. Think about where you might be several years from now, 4 years from now. If you use these few years, if you use the hours that you have in each day to work on your relationship with God, to work hard in your classes, to apply yourself on the job, to throw yourself into the various activities. These activities, again, it may not be in a highly specialized field, like what's more common, I suppose, in higher education today, but it is highly specialized if you look at it in the spiritual sense, because it's really a lost art. Balanced individuals that put God first, that revolve their life and their activities around the Creator God. Psalm 89, verse 46, "How long, Lord, will you hide yourself forever? Shall your wrath burn like fire?" And then David says in verse 47, "Remember how short my time is." The author here, he wants God to intervene soon because of how short life is. Sometimes we are expected to wait on God patiently, as the book of Hebrews brings out. However, we go to God oftentimes with urgency. And in the case of this psalm, we ask God to intervene, knowing just how short our time is. You all know how quickly your time at college passes. I certainly know that, since the college has been going now for 10 years. Those years have gone by quickly. I brought out in club just the other night just a comment that Walter Isaacson made in his book about the late Steve Jobs, who died recently, co-founder of Apple, and he's a controversial figure. I think most people in America either love him or they can't stand him. And it generally has to do with whether you really love Apple or you can't stand Apple. In any event, he was a unique individual. And when he was trying to get paired together with one CEO back in the 80s, in order to encourage him to come on board with Apple, he told this CEO that he thought he would die young, which he eventually did, just at the age of 56. But he told the CEO that he needed to accomplish things quickly, so that he could make his mark on Silicon Valley history. He had an urgency, you see, into accomplishing things sooner rather than later. He had to go after his profession, which really was his obsession. Jobs said, "We all have a short period of time on this earth. We probably only have the opportunity to do a few things really great and do them well." He said, "None of us has any idea how long we're going to be here, nor do I, but my feeling is I've got to accomplish a lot of these things while I am young. I need to accomplish these things while I'm young," he said, "while I have the opportunity, while I have the time, while I have the energy to really go after it." Look at Ephesians 5, the book of Ephesians. Now, as you grow older, this is why we really have encouraged our children to pursue music as actively as they can right now, because my wife and I know how busy we are as adults today with the activities that we have now in the professional world, you might say. And as you grow older and as you get into your job or wherever, your life does become a little bit more specialized. But you certainly can draw on those unique activities and experiences and that training that you received as a youngster. As I said about Pepe Romero's daily schedule, exercise, 6 to 8 hours of practice on the guitar, after lunch with his brother, and then, as he said, spend time with the family at night. He keeps, even as a skilled professional, he keeps a fairly balanced lifestyle where the family certainly gets quite a lot of his time. Ephesians 5, verse 15, I'll read from the Moffat. It says, "Be strictly careful then about the life that you lead. Act like suitable men, not like thoughtless. Make the very most of your time, for these are evil days." Make the very most of your time. That principle applies no matter who you are and no matter what era you live in, but you can add a sense of urgency to your daily routine, to your weekly schedule today, just because of what Paul writes there, because of the days that we're living in. That's the point that I really concentrated on more at club the other night. These evil days, we're living in urgent times. We're living in the last days, in fact. Mr. Armstrong, in the last year of his life, was really trying to get the members of the Worldwide Church of God to sit up and take note of what was happening in the world. And God inspired those warnings that he delivered. Clearly, you can see it now in hindsight, because look at how many of those brethren went to sleep as soon as Mr. Armstrong died. Look at how many of them just stopped working for God, stopped tithing that time to God day in and day out. Matthew chapter 24, look at what Jesus tells us to do, or the urgency that he says we ought to maintain. Back in 1985, when Mr. Armstrong was appealing to the church members to put God first and to organize their days well and to be urgent in all things, he said, this is from July of 1985, "We need a sense of urgency. Events in the world are not taking a vacation, but speeding to the climax of this world and civilization as we know it. Consider the days that we're living in." The next forum or Trumpet Daily program on the news update, it's long overdue. I've been meaning to get into it here. I just have been a little short on time. But there's so much happening in the world, so much happening in the Middle East, here in the United States, in Europe in particular. These are the last days. Matthew 25 4, verse 41, says, 2 women shall be grinding at the mill, the one shall be taken and the other left. Watch you therefore, verse 42 says, for you know not what hour your Lord does come. Watch, stay awake, pay attention to what's happening. Be active. We don't know when this work will end. We don't know when Jesus Christ will return, but we certainly want to be ready for when that happens. Verse 43, but know this, that if the goodman of the house had known in what watch the thief would come, he would have watched and would not have suffered his house to be broken up. Therefore be you also ready, for in such an hour as you think not, the Son of Man comes. See, be ready for Jesus Christ's return. Put in your time, put in those hours, be a good spiritual workman, and then lead a life of balance, of course. That's taught and reinforced daily at this school. This is not just a Bible seminary by any means. It's a school, God's school, in fact, that emphasizes God's education. Verse 45 says, who then is a faithful and wise servant, whom his Lord has made ruler over his household to give them meat in due season? Blessed, verse 46 says, blessed is that servant whom his Lord, when he comes, shall find so doing. See, we've got to be found doing. We've got to be found working. Verse 47 says, verily I say unto you, that he shall make him ruler over all his goods. And verse 48 finally, but and if that evil servant shall say in his heart, my Lord delays his coming, well, then you can read the outcome there. So many, you see, in these latter days have said that by their actions. Oh, God just delayed his coming. Jesus Christ isn't coming back, or it's not going to be for ages and ages to come. And they went to sleep. Notice what my father wrote in the Ezekiel booklet. He said, when you see the way world events are unfolding, you know an explosion is about to happen. It's only a matter of when. It's only a matter of when. And really, those explosions are already starting. Where you have Israel, evidently, preparing for war with Iran. You have the Arab Spring that's now turning into a nightmare in the Middle East, certainly for Israel, and even for the United States too, even though we don't acknowledge that in Washington. But it is true. And then you have Europe in crisis, about to fall apart because of the economic crisis over there, and Germany coming to the forefront, clearly. So many publications are writing about this, and Mr. Armstrong prepared us for this decades and decades and decades ago. You know, he says, it's about to come. There has never been evil as there is today, continuing in the booklet. Do we have the urgency we need in these dangerous times? He says, I want to help you get God's perspective and make sure you are as urgent as the times demand. Be as urgent, you see, as these times demand. Let's conclude over in John chapter 9. John 9 in verse 1. And as Jesus passed by, he saw a man which was blind from his birth, and his disciples asked him, saying, Master, who did sin, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? And Jesus answered, neither has this man sinned nor his parents, but that the works of God should be made manifest in him. It was an opportunity, you see, for God to intervene, Jesus said. And then he continues the thought in verse 4, saying, I must work the works of him that sent me while it is day. The night comes when no man can work. You see, while we have time, we've got to put in the hours. While you have an opportunity, we've got to put in the hours. Jesus said, I've got to work while it's day, because the night is coming. Now break that principle down into your daily routine. Be busy about your day. And then when the night comes, and the way God organized the day, incidentally, is to begin at sunset. You wind down at night, and that's when you start preparing well for the next day through your reading and your study and a good amount of rest. In Satan's world, of course, it's backwards. That's when young people especially really rev it up. As soon as the sun sets, then that's when the partying begins. That's when you go late into the night with entertainment and TV and all of those things that just wipe you out for the next day. God says reverse that. Not that you can't ever be entertained or have a nice evening out with friends, But what is your habit? What is your routine? That's what God is asking. Prepare for the next day and come into each day refreshed and ready to put God first, to pour your heart into your studies, to work hard on the job, to get in the extra personal studies that you need to dig into. And then add to that, like you receive here at God's College, all of the extracurricular activities that you've somehow got to make time for as well. It's a challenge, but what a lifestyle God is promoting here. Follow in the example of Jesus Christ. He stayed up late on occasion, but if you look at those occasions, it was to stay up late to pray, to draw closer to God. Jesus' custom was to get up early, a great while before the day, it said, and to go off and draw near to God. That's the key to maturing and growing spiritually. That kind of lifestyle is not something you do after you grow up and after you mature spiritually. That's what you do to become spiritually minded. That's what you do to mature the way that you want to mature. Now is the time to pursue after that. Because as David said in the Psalms, remember how short your time is.
For more information about the subject covered today, call and ask for our newest PDF in the Trumpet Daily reprint series, Are You Redeeming the Time? You can download the article right now at thetrumpetdaily.com. Or if you want your own hard copy, simply call the number on your screen and make your request. Time is something true Christians living in the last hour of this evil world should be acutely aware of. But if we're not careful, many seconds, minutes, and hours can slip away unproductively. This informative handout, if applied, will help you use your time wisely. Call now and request, Are You Redeeming the Time? Now when you call, also request the most popular booklet Herbert W. Armstrong ever wrote, The 7 Laws of Success. Mr. Armstrong learned more than 60 years ago that true success is not reserved for those with superior ability, but for individuals willing to follow a definite set of laws that guarantee successful results. These laws are outlined in this little booklet, requested by more than 3 million people. It was written many years ago, but it contains a timeless message that can be applied to your life right now. It's packed with wise instruction that will, if applied, lead readers along a path towards success. So go to the phone and continue your education today. Request the 7 Laws of Success, and when you do, we'll also add you to our Trumpet subscriber list. Each month, the Trumpet magazine is mailed to more than 325,000 subscribers worldwide. And don't forget about thetrumpetdaily.com if you'd like to view this program again or download today's free literature offer. That's thetrumpetdaily.com. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you again next time.